Yeah, I'm so happy to see everybody arriving. It's great. Okay, so we're going to start our presentation today. And thank you everyone for joining us. This presentation is being recorded, and there we can see Stan and Rick. Welcome. And as we open this morning, I would like to take the time to acknowledge that our gathering is being hosted on Coast Salish Nations traditional and unceded territories. Those are the nations of Kwantlen, Katzie, Tsawwassen, Semiahmoo, Stolo, and Saanich nations. And as we stand alongside the Truth and Reconciliation Accord, it behooves each of us to investigate our histories with these lands and our access to the resources connected to these lands. Thank you so much. Welcome, gentlemen. Do you want to unmute yourself, please, Rick? Great. Yeah. Good. Stan, we're going to ask you to use your theater voice to really project. So Rick and Stan are social distancing. They're respecting social distancing today. So if folks can't hear, just send me a message and we'll ask, send me a message through your chat box and we'll ask Rick and Stan to project a little louder. But Rick, I wonder if you could begin, please, by telling us more about your role as Director of Caregivers and Family Support at Seniors Come Share Society.
Great. Thanks, Tricia. We're really excited to be here today. So my role with Seniors Come Share Society as Director of Caregiver and Family Services, by and large, I work with caregivers and families within the mandate of Seniors Come Share would be Surrey and White Rock. So working between Surrey Memorial and Peace Arch Hospital. The nature of the kinds of issues that come up will be discussed in the presentation. It would be broader than what we're discussing today in terms of we're trying to obviously focus on end of life and what that sort of journey looks like for a caregiver. But it would be anybody from an early diagnosis to somebody providing support to somebody with a brain injury, acquired brain injury, and liaising with Fraser Health. It's a really varied role. We've been talking about that with Stan today. But very excited to be here today to share a little insight. And Stan and I have been working on trying to keep this sort of a casual conversation, not too heavy. The subject is heavy, and so we're just going to keep it light conversation between two people.
Okay. Well, thank you again, Stan, for being willing to share your personal story. I know that you're one of the unsung heroes in the work that you do. So thank you so much for being here. I'm going to turn my camera off and leave it up to you folks, and we'll catch you at the end.
Okay, great. Thank you. So welcome everyone. I'm again very excited to be here. I've given you a little bit of insight as to who I am and what I do. I also have, I'll just expand, I've done all of my levels of training through Peace Arch Hospice Society. I have advanced education in palliative care, gerontology, and currently working on a bachelor's in health and human sciences, as well as psychiatric nursing. So I'm sort of busy with all of those things as well as fulfilling this role. And I'm also first and foremost a caregiver. I have been a caregiver in a number of different roles. And I think it would be in my best interest to sort of let Stan, for those that don't know him, and I think if you're all seeing the slide, that he's a 25-year volunteer with Peace Arch Hospice Society, and I could have listed a million other accolades, but he's a caregiver as well. So
yes, I'm a caregiver as well. Or I was and still am.
Yeah. And what drew you to this? what drew you to hospice initially? I didn't know until literally this week that you were 25 years doing.
What drew me to hospice was the fact that I took the course because somebody had advised me to take the original hospice course. And I believe that everybody should take it because we're all going to die once. And we should take the course to prepare ourselves. And that's so important to have preparation.
So I'm going to, hopefully our technical issues are all worked out. Perfect. Everybody should be advancing to the slides now. So a little bit more about ComeShare, Seniors ComeShare Society. It's been in the community for 40+ years. Our mission is to build safe, inclusive, and nurturing communities for older adults. We offer services under 3 umbrellas. Our day program, that unfortunately has not been operating. A lot of references in our program today will be specific to COVID restrictions and things that we're all living through currently, and also talking to sort of in a normal situation as well. So the day program that's not currently operating, caregiver and family services that I oversee, and community services that is a number of different programs. We have 50 staff and 150 volunteers, and we appreciate the impact of collaboration like the event we're working on today. This is a quick highlight in terms of the response that we've had to COVID. We've launched, this was only yesterday, a share platform is a virtual access to programming. Senior Center Without Walls is a telephone-based program that makes it super simple to stay connected. Health checks is something ongoing that we've done. Online recreation programs would be tied into that virtual platform that was launched yesterday. We've immediately responded to reallocation of funding through partners like United Way with meal and cookie deliveries, and offered variations on classes that we were offering beforehand, like our cooking classes. So the reason we're here today is to talk about the caregiver role and specifically self-care, the importance of self-care. So a lot of the slides, the intention of the series is an educational format that can be drawn upon after the fact. So I'm not going to read everything. Basically, the critical role that a caregiver plays typically along the long journey of providing support to somebody. And again, our focus today is at basically the end of life. And there will be a question and answer. I should have, I'm not sure whether we covered that or not, but so through the slides, we're going to talk on several different points, but basically the focus is on providing care to a caregiver that you're aware of that is probably going through the issues of coping through their end of life journey with a loved one. And secondly, that we provide somebody some tools. In some of the conversations that Stan and I had in preparation for today, we're both sort of in agreement. There's no magic bullet. There's no magic wand. There's little things that will be gleaned in a presentation like this, but it is an all-consuming experience for a caregiver, again, who's typically done quite a lot of very hands-on, consumed elements of their life. And then when you're in the final throes of somebody's near the end of their life, these are some of the things that we're going to touch on today. The importance, I love the image of this. It doesn't really need a lot of explanation, but you should take care of yourself first, as the airlines indicate when you're boarding a plane. You have to take care of yourself first in order to be able to help anyone else. Much of the first slides is not so much talking points, but just to get through some details. So caregiver burnout, the technical description, according to Cleveland Clinic, is a state of physical, emotional, and mental exhaustion. This is what can happen if we don't support our caregivers and our self-care is not practiced. They, along with their loved ones, could end up in hospital or worse. Given that we're talking about an end-of-life scenario, it means that literally we have 2 people who are not managing well. And these slides, I use these in different presentations because oftentimes people don't define themselves. Somebody who's a spouse will probably easily identify with their role as a caregiver, but there's countless other things that provide or that would define one as a caregiver, and these are just some of the examples. Couple of pages of these, and so going through them, and if you've answered yes to any of these questions, you are a family or a friend caregiver. The number of caregivers in BC, as noted by Family Caregivers of BC, an organization that I do a lot of collaborative work with, is 1 million people, unpaid. So again, a spouse situation, a daughter, a son, and as we all sort of know with the demographics, that's only going to grow. This, again, the images in the next several slides, I think, help to tell the story without even the caption doing much. But if professional staffs are the backbone of our healthcare system, then caregivers are the skin that holds it all together. So supporting caregivers is not only crucial just for them, but also for the healthcare system and the community at large. Just as we take care of our skin, the largest organ in the body, it is imperative to take care of our caregivers so that they can basically do, get to the finish line, do the hard work that they do every day. The key talking points for the presentation today start basically here at this point. So self-care and caring for the caregiver. The focus of self-care and caring for the caregiver is to address and support the emotional, psychosocial, physical, and clinical needs of caregivers and families within the community, especially when attempting to cope with the end of life of a loved one. And I noted in green here, the following is by no means a complete list, merely a start to create some much needed awareness around the issues caregivers face. So it's noted here the top 5. That's, again, not comprehensive, but a good start. So seeking help to ensure all is in order, and I'll call it preparation, from the time of diagnosis, the understanding that you're working with a palliative care team to get your affairs in order, and that would be any number of different things, including the last note, that you perhaps seek some counseling yourself. Support groups, education sessions, making memories a priority right up until the end, staying connected, don't try to do this alone, and these are all repeated on the next few slides in more detail, and keeping up with hobbies and interests, remaining socially engaged. So this was, again, in conversations that Stan and I had in preparation for this, a lot of this is fundamental. It would be taking care of yourself whether you were a caregiver or not. So, but the key, as noted in bold, ask for help. Ask for help. I've always found that making lists, I'm not a list maker to begin with, but making lists does help because you have so many things on your mind at the time. Get plenty of rest, express your emotion, or feel free to express your emotion, I should say. Accept the help, key. Eat and hydrate, take time for yourself, that meaning, stay connected with things that are important to you outside of your caregiving role. Ensure your affairs in order. Avoid isolation if at all possible. Not easy during COVID, but there are ways. And don't forget to ask for help. And of course, then accept the help. So with each of these points, it's repeating, they're numbered 1 through 5. And it's here that as a talking point, so self-care and or preparing for what is to come by seeking help without delay. If you could comment on that, Stan, in terms of
Seeking help, I think many times we don't seek help.
Yeah.
It's there with your friends, particularly friends that you can trust.
Mm-hmm.
And lots of times there's help from a religious point of view as well, from ministers and caregivers that are within the church facility. They're a big help. But I think we're sometimes too proud, and we think we can handle the whole thing ourselves. And that's what beats us down to the point where we are unable to be of service to a person that we're looking after.
So I think here that some of the highlights Stan has touched on, the idea of any religious affiliation, you're probably comfortable with that group. They're very likely aware that the person you're caring for might be in declining health. Share it with them. Share how you're feeling. There's 2 slides that sort of touch on this. I've highlighted the share program that we launched yesterday at Seniors Come Share Society. It's an ever morphing. It just got started, but it's basically been founded in through COVID-19 and the isolation that people are experiencing. So it's virtual. It's some of the day programming has been modified to be able to reach people that way. Personally, through the caregiver supports that are provided through my program, there will be one-on-one sessions that can be booked, group therapy sessions, and educational events. And then I've noted some other obvious ones. Peace Stars Hospice Society, that would be, this is a farther reaching educational tool that would be any hospice society. The Alzheimer's Society, funeral service providers, as you're, perhaps looking into services. Is there anything else you can think to add there?
No, I don't think. I think I was very fortunate that I had 2 families that really carried me through the tough times that I had to go through.
Yeah. I didn't, in terms of introduction, I'll just make note of it now because it'll probably come up quickly at the end, that Stan has a lovely journey through caregiving that has been documented in two different formats, a documentary and a TED Talk, and the reference to those is at the very end. We'll get there, but just so that it's, I've highlighted what they are and definitely worth a view. This is, again, second slide in terms of support groups and education sessions. We both were sort of in agreement that if you've sought the counsel of a support group, it would be really important to maintain that. It might be a little bit daunting towards the end of somebody's journey to engage in it because you've got so many other things going on. But I've noted a few other things here in terms of what one would expect. They offer training sessions, workshops, seminars, and there's, I mean, with the technology that we have, it's not hard to find access to information on the internet with advanced care planning, estate planning, MAID, journaling, which I find personally quite helpful. And then some very interesting things that I was just looking at the other day, throwing a safe, physically distanced memorial or celebration of life. But in terms of the looking for support, when you already have it established in a support group, it's really important to share the changes that are going on with those folks. They're all at different stages and all have something different to offer. And through the support groups that I've facilitated in the past, it's a really special gathering around and holding somebody up when they are part of a support group where they bonded. Did you have anything to add about that? You have a very special support group that you actually
facilitate. I have a support group that I meet every second week with the Alzheimer's group, and we've met since the middle of March. We meet at Bakerview Park, but there's about 10 or 12 of us who are all caregivers. And some of them are close to their spouses being close to dying. And they find great support within this group. As a matter of fact, they insisted that we do meet. It wasn't through myself, they insisted we meet. I think we need lots of times to give ourselves permission to grieve. And this is an opportunity within this group that they do have an opportunity to grieve. Yeah. Because we understand. Not everybody understands what you're going through. But when you're in a group that are going through the same thing as you've been through or are going through, they understand. And when people understand, they have much more empathy and sympathy with you and give you that kind of support which you need.
Yeah, they very likely shared the journey to that point, and then when they see somebody who's, perhaps by connecting with the group found a foundation that is going to help them get through, but when you're reaching towards more difficult times, there's decline in health, they're the best people to sort of stay connected with. And I have to emphasize that I truly miss the face-to-face that we haven't been encountering a lot lately, but I have come to be resigned that something is better than nothing. And this is a perfect example today with our webinar series of reaching people in any way that we possibly can. This one, there's a bit of back and forth and overlapping, but I highlighted this one because creating special moments and making it a priority until the very end, and how one does that in terms of preparation is as early as one can. People are processing news that they've been given, prognosis and things like that. But the sooner you get the logistics out of the way, dotting I's and crossing T's, then I love this image where he's taking her out, I don't know, for dinner, to a garden. The more of those you can do while somebody is physically capable is so much a huge part of doing this. I think I was going to ask you about some of your special moments.
One of the things that I did with my wife for the last 6 months, when I knew that she was closer to the time of dying, I would wind down, and she was in the nursing home, Evergreen, and I would wind the bed down to my level so I could kneel down and hold her hand, and I would sing to her every night. And I so often when I sang to her, the tears would come to her eyes, and I knew that she was hearing and understanding what love I had for her and the love she had for me. I think there's nothing more important than to be able to share that love with one person that is dying. Because when they're heading off to heaven, if you believe in heaven, then they know that they're leaving a loved one who has respected them and loved them through this time.
Yeah. One of the things that is evident if you get a chance to look at the documentary and the TED Talk, specifically the TED Talk, it talks about how many times during a visit Stan would kiss his wife, and it was it's just very special to know that was the way that they connected. And ice cream was important, right?
I took her ice cream all the time. People don't realize that one of the most tender parts of the body are the lips. And I kiss my wife regularly throughout my visit, because it was an incredible way of connecting with her.
Special times. And that's, so the point is to, get the details out of the way and to try to focus on whatever memories can be made. This one, I love the image of this. I see this as a neighbor who's sort of consoling a friends probably going through some difficult times. The point of staying connected is it's just really important. So I've highlighted two things, and that Stan already alluded to an important person, at least one person that you're sharing sort of what's going on and how you're feeling. And I've noted specifically that optimally not a family member who's also probably experiencing some of the same things as you are. And then highlighted at the bottom of the paragraph that telling your GP or nurse practitioner, whoever your primary care provider is, exactly where you're at. They're probably aware of the earlier stages of the journey, but where things are at, so that they can be monitoring your health more closely and assisting you any way that they possibly can. You had that there?
I think the most important thing is prepare yourself for the time when your loved one dies, and that preparation is so important, so that when this happens, you're able to carry on your life in a way that you've done your really best.
Yeah. It leads me with what Stan just alluded to, because it's a large topic, and even narrowing caregiving, the role of the caregiver down to more or less end of life. There's another presentation, if you would, on how one redefines themselves after they've lost a loved one, especially in a long caregiving role. That perhaps we'll be able to speak about again sometime.
Yes.
This one, as I was writing the caption, I really knew what I was. It's likely the last thing you think you should be doing, but it's one of the most important things you do. So take a break. It will likely seem like the very last thing you feel like doing. However, making the effort to break the day-to-day routine of caregiving will help to replenish you in ways that you're not currently being fulfilled by. In the process, a break from reality helps fill your empty bucket. And so again, in ways that you're not being fulfilled, something that was important to you, the caption, or sorry, the image says a lot in terms of two friends sharing something they probably shared in the past, that your role cannot, your day-to-day role is, say it's hospice visits, you're visiting a loved one in the hospice. I mean, you could take knitting in that, like that image, but it's important to continue to do things. And then the second part of that, to stay socially connected. So when somebody says, do you want to get together for coffee, come over for dinner, and your first inclination will be no, but to try to do it.
I think one of the worst things that can happen is people who are going through caregiving is to go home and start watching TV. And that's probably one of the worst things, because you get absorbed in something that is not real. I took the time to get out of and play pickleball. I did some line dancing. I did social dancing. I did a number of things to take myself out of this point where I was would be a more assistant to my wife by going through some of these things than allowing myself just to sit in front of the TV.
Yeah. So the key, again, it's not the natural inclination, because you're a role, but it also starts to prepare you for after that role has changed. So reconnecting, there's very typically an isolation or distancing as your role has sort of increased. But this is a perfect opportunity, again, ask for help, accept the help, and then these opportunities would they come to fruition. I've included some resources, certainly myself here, Tricia at Peace Arch Hospice Society. Family Caregivers of BC is a wonderful organization. Again, I work quite closely with them. All of this, I'll again highlight, is not comprehensive. There's thousands of other sort of options. The Family Caregivers of BC, just to sort of highlight what they do, they've increased their helpline, and even that is still not servicing the entire need. They take people in through the helpline, and then currently what they're doing is sending them, after trying to meet their needs with some resources and things like that, then they'll send them back to the community where there might be something more specific for them to help with. So it's not so much a hamster wheel, it's the idea that returning somebody back to something where there's perhaps other local sort of resources that somebody like myself would perhaps know through Peace Arch Hospital or things like something like that. This is the viewing that I was talking about with regards to the documentary. Highly recommend taking it in. Did you want to talk about it?
The documentary is a life story about not only myself but my wife, and it's very interesting. When my grandson, who is in the film industry, began to take a number of film shots of myself and my wife, he had no idea what he was doing. But when he took it home to his wife, who is also in the film industry, she said, "This is a love story." And so that's, before she's gone, it's a love story of our life. And then the PowerPoint is dealing with the power of love. I think they're both well worth watching.
They are. Absolutely, and I think that I would say we're slightly ahead of time. We're whizzing through it. So I think what the goal of our conversation, this conversation between Stan and I sharing with you guys, we didn't rehearse, but we've had conversations recently, and in several situations I said, I wish we were recording this because there's nuggets in everything that you talk about. There are things that you might miss, forget to share.
And one thing, I found that I have a large family, so and the tendency is to cut your family out of it, draw them in.
Yeah.
It's so important to draw them in because they have no idea really what's happening to you unless you share it with them.
Yeah.
They think you're doing just fine if you're not connecting with them.
Yeah.
But you're not doing just fine if your loved one is dying.
Yeah. Yeah. I think especially in the role that I play and the organization that we work with, we know that family dynamics plays a huge role in how smoothly things go at end of life. And I think the more upfront, inclusive you are to be mindful of people's feelings, people's feelings are raw, their emotions are running high. It happens all the time where somebody had wanted to be consulted about something but wasn't, and under normal circumstances it wouldn't mean much, but when they're also dealing with perhaps the pending loss of their mother or father, and mom or dad, the spouse, hasn't sort of shared things with them, it's important to do so because they're going to be part of that, checking things off the list, getting things out of the way so that there is still memories being made towards the end. I think also in terms of how seeking professional help, whether that be through a counselor, they would be reiterating the same things. They would be saying, including them, being mindful of everyone processes grief differently, to respect that because you've been on this journey with somebody throughout a period of decline, so intimately connected with them, as Stan sort of alluded to, they might not be aware of how close this is. And it's important that you would be sharing that with them. I have a million stories, but they would be confidential. The idea that people could have avoided an uncomfortable situation simply by sharing.
I think also you have to come to that point where you're going to release them, and let them die. And I think that lots of times we're very selfish. We don't want them to die.
Yeah.
But if I were in the situation my wife was in, I would want to die.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's very hard to release them.
And that is oftentimes processed, in my experience, processed by the intimate caregiver. Again, that letting go is processed quicker than, again, children who might not even live in the province. They're just not seeing it that way. And so to convey that, people need time to process. So you've been living it, they have not to the same degree. And so having that conversation with them to say, what's actually happening here. It's important. And to use, we talked about terminology. We talked about using words that are real, even with children. Everyone has a different view on that. But by and large, children are capable of understanding a whole lot more than we give them credit for. So using definitive terms like grandma's dying.
Yes. I found that with my great-grandchildren who were very young, and they would ask where great-grandmother was, and I'd say she's in the process of dying.
Yeah.
And
how did they respond?
The response was one that enlightened them, the realization that something real was happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I've experienced a number of situations very similar in the sense that there was the immediate inclination was to protect and shelter, and it was confusing. It led to some confusion. Again, everybody processes differently, but he has different ways of dealing with things. But when through conversations like this, we also talked about webinar series like this, that even if you glean a couple of interesting ideas or different ways of looking at things, those of us that sort of deal with this on a quite regular basis and have walked in these shoes before, it's giving permission to the others that are not as far along on the journey, by saying, those are things you're going to feel. It's going to be, I don't sugarcoat much of anything, that it's consuming. It will feel like literally one foot in front of the other. There will be a level of exhaustion that you experience physically. And there's no other way to feel it. You have to go through it. And that's why the other tips that we've sort of shared, the lessons learned from others, is that it really does pay to take a break, because they will be there tomorrow. Eventually, your role will change, but during the last several weeks or months of life, really important to step away, so that you can continue to go either to the hospital or play the intimate role that you want to. Because if you can't, going back to the airline mask scenario, that if you're not able to, then somebody else is going to have to step in anyway. Do you have anything else to add?
I think one of the things that I found so interesting is after my wife had died and I had done grieving, I was uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. And
I really felt the need to realize that, because I believe in heaven and I believe in God.
Mm-hmm.
And I think God sent me a message that a friend of ours who had died a few years before, her friend, and I had this dream that she met her and took her off to heaven.
Nice.
And after that experience, after that dream, I felt so comfortable and was able to resume my life. I think these are incredible experiences that we do have.
Yeah. And it's important, we've shared a few of these in the last several weeks talking as well, that these things that seem to be signs or meant to be things that have, pay attention to them. Yes. Because they're probably, they're there. They're happening for a reason. You can disregard them, but you look back on them and go, oh, I think there was a message in that, or yes, something. I believe we're in really good time. Oh, perfect. So thank you very much to all of you for spending time with us, and whether we've got any yet or Tricia's going to ask for some questions, we're happy to answer any.
There we go. Can you hear me, Rick?
Yes.
Okay, I don't see that. I don't see my screen, so I'm a bit confused.
I can see you.
I mean, I'm a bit confused. I don't see my picture window. I have a few questions for Stan to begin, and I just want to say how inspiring it is to receive your story and your experiences, Stan. It emboldens me to think of loving ways to approach end of life for my loved ones, and so powerful, and wow, a real love story. And
the last thing to go is music.
Music.
And I think that's why I spent so much time singing to my wife. It was such a rewarding thing for me, but also for her.
And what kind of songs did you sing?
Yeah. Can I have this dance for the rest of my life?
Oh my gosh.
You be my partner every night. It was Anne Murray's.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh.
I sang her that.
Beautiful. Yeah.
And then I sang her a number of hymns.
Uh-huh.
I think the one that she liked most was, can I have?
Uh-huh. Now, another question that I had, and you've already answered it, but I wonder if you can elaborate more, is did you and your wife have conversations about end of life or death, dying, and grief? I mean, clearly you had the same faith, and and correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm assuming that you had the same perspectives on the afterlife.
Yes.
And that must have supported both of you so much. But did you have questions specifically about how to care, what you want, what she wanted, what you wanted towards the end before her Alzheimer's progressed?
When she was diagnosed, we spent 2 weeks crying. And then we spent the rest of the time talking about the end of her life.
Uh-huh.
And what she wanted, what she would like and what she wanted.
Right.
So I had a great preparation from her that really helped me so much in the process of going through dying, because it got to that point where she could no longer communicate with me. Other than, as you'll see in the TED Talks, we only communicated by kissing.
So beautiful.
When she had soft, silky lips, I knew things were fine. Hard lips, I knew something was wrong.
Oh my goodness.
And yes, they say she couldn't verbally communicate, but she did through her lips. So if her lips were tough and straight, I knew something, either she had, she needed a diaper changed, or her brassiere was on wrong, or something was wrong. And I had to search around to find what that was. And the beautiful part was, when I found what the problem was, then they would come back to the soft, silky lips.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
People don't realize how they could communicate.
Right, right. Well, and I'm also just thinking, what beautiful lessons to pass on to your family, your grandchildren, your great-grandchildren. I loved what you said, that your great-grandchild knew that something real was happening.
Yes.
When you spoke of that great-grandmother was in the process of dying, and what a gift to give a child.
It's interesting, when I first, my great-granddaughter, and she would be about 5 or 6, and she was standing in front of me and asked about her great-grandmother. And when I told her, the next thing she did was jump into my lap and throw her arms around me and said, "I'm so sorry." And that brings a lot of tears.
Sure.
But the experience for them was wonderful.
Oh yeah, what a gift you've given them.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. And Rick, I really appreciated what you had to say, in that if caregivers, when we come into the place of being caregivers, if we don't take a break, someone else will have to step in for us anyways.
Yeah.
That's a real piece of wisdom that I wouldn't have on my radar of, I remember I compared caregiving to being a new mom, and I didn't let too many people help.
Yeah. I had that experience of, my wife was at ComShare for a number of years, and one day I got a call from from ComShare, and specifically they wanted to interview me and talk to me. And she said to me, she said, "Stan, it's time to put your wife into a home." She said, you've run down completely, and we've made an appointment with your doctor." So I went to see my doctor, and he said, "Stan, in 3 months' time, you won't be here if you carry on the way you are to look after your wife." you'll be dead.
Wow.
As a caregiver, we don't realize how run down we are.
Right.
And that's why we need friends and neighbors and people that are honest with us to come forward and say, it's time.
Right. Right. Which I imagine is another, threshold of grieving, to
Yes.
let other people help.
And then the grieving process starts because you're no longer the initial caregiver. You become the one that's the visitor almost.
Right.
I can just touch on that for a minute because I think the importance, and it wasn't highlighted there was just so much to sort of cover, but there is something special about that. I'll highlight it as hospice. When somebody has actually gone to hospice, the role that they play, the full engagement of the duties, you're running this ship in terms of doing things on a daily basis. There's a lot to be said for handing over those responsibilities, the actual physical caregiving, because then it will allow for intimate moments to be more frequent because you're not on the clock, so to speak.
Right.
There's something magical about that. And it wasn't touched on in the presentation, but I've seen it many times. People are reluctant to surrender that role, but when they do, it becomes more about again, they're not on the clock. It's not falling only to them to make sure a meal is ready, a change is done, whatever it is. It's falling to the professional staff, and then you get to return to more of a social engagement. This singing,
Yes,
and doing things like that.
I know that on the last 2 days before my wife did die, the hospice volunteers came in and sat with my wife overnight, which gave me the opportunity of going home and sleeping, and catching up. They did an incredible job and wrote me a note to let me know how the night went.
Yeah.
I think we have to learn to depend on other people.
Yeah. Surrender. That's a big piece of it, eh?
Surrender. Yeah.
Surrender.
Yeah.
Stan, I had another question.
I was going to say there's a big difference just between surrender and abandon.
Yeah.
The idea that you are not, it just again leaves you to be able to be still engaged if you surrender some of the responsibility. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. And I just want to read one comment that's just come in, that the shift from letting someone do the work while you become support is difficult in a society that models independence and not interdependence.
Mm-hmm.
So true. Yeah. 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 No, there was one more question and I wrote it down, but I'm not seeing it. It was an insight that from Trevor's presentation last week, because he was talking about when we're stressed, that we we become more tightly bound by our perspectives. We're less open to receiving when we're stressed.
Mm-hmm.
So it only makes sense that we're less able to ask for help when we're stressed, which is counterintuitive to our survival, but it's what the brain does, right? Yeah, so I think it's something that we can't hear this message enough.
It's
to
so
reach
important.
out.
It's so important for a caregiver to look after their health. And
Yeah.
I think in that period of time, the last 6 months, I think I lost over 20 pounds, and not realizing that I lost this much weight.
Right.
And I wasn't looking after my own health.
Right.
In relating to the comment that you spoke about with Trevor's presentation and the blinders that go on and the 1 foot in front of the other routine that you carry out, you wouldn't know. Others notice that you've lost weight, or you look you're looking tired, you're looking, you know, but you're just, again, consumed. You're consumed with the role that you play, the duty that you want to fulfill. And it's really important at that point. So you're going to do it. It's just in a presentation, something like this, is to be mindful, go, oh, they told me that was going to happen. I'm going to acknowledge my neighbor when they bring over a pot roast or whatever. And I'm going to say, yes, okay, thank you. That when they're doing that, that there's probably more of a message than you really just need to eat. It's probably more than that.
And sometimes when I found that when the neighbor, a person would come over and bring a pot roast, I invited them in to eat with them.
You would.
Which gave me the opportunity of being able to talk to somebody. Because it's nice to have that meal, but when you're eating it alone, you have your thoughts.
Right. Yeah. And unfortunately with COVID, that's probably not happening now, you know, that neighborly connection.
You froze there, Tricia.
Pardon me? You lost me? Oh,
No.
You can't hear
Almost
me?
got through the whole thing without, like without an incident. Are you there? Are you
Yeah,
back?
I'm here. I'm here. You can't hear me?
No, you froze.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm seeing that the
froze again.
internet connection is unstable. But I just responded that due to COVID,
Yeah.
that neighborly
It
connection
happens
is
even
likely
with the
not
most,
happening.
big budget productions, which we're not.
There's that.
You're there now.
You're back.
Okay, now you're frozen.
Oh.
So you know what? We're coming up to the hour, and we've got many thank yous in our chat box. Many thank yous to Stan and Rick. And so this is a good opportunity to wrap it up. And yeah, just say so many thanks to Stan for sharing. And you filled me up with your story, truly.
You.
And thank you, Rick, for being a great collaborator. And we look forward to more collaborations. And
Yes.
okay. Okay, and thank you all of our participants. We have one more presentation next week, and that will be mine, The Power of Human Connection. And much of my presentation will be a lot of review from what we've heard so far, but under a different lens. So I hope to see you all next week as well. And thank you so much, everyone. Have a loving day.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.